The new generation right now, they don't really know what really happened during colonialism because these histories are not being taught in the schools. And because of that, even though we speak these things, we talk, but we don't really find the common ground because they don't really know what we're talking about. Most of them, when you share these informations, they're kind of like wondering and they're like, well, what really are you talking about, right? Because these informations are not being given from our schools. This is the journey to One Africa.
International guest, and later you will be able to ask questions as well to us. But we'll have first two international speakers respond as well to the presentation, but also bring in their own perspectives on neocolonialism, which are Jaforti Princewil Ghana, an award-winning sustainable agriculturalist, trainer, public speaker, and has 8 years of experience leading the Sustain Afrique team. Welcome. And the second speaker, he's coming from Cameroon. And Mika Shawala is the founder of Swahili Nation, One Africa Foundation, and creator of the YouTube channel Swahili Nation. And he's not in Tanzania, but from Tanzania, and he's the second Zoom speaker. So I think they are finding their way. And otherwise, if they're not here yet, then we maybe give room for Q&A in the audience. Oh, they're coming. Yes. Welcome, Mika. How are you?
Hi, everybody. I am doing fine.
Yes,
welcome. I'm sorry for inconvenience. I'm in South Africa right now for a business trip. And where I am right now, there's a huge group of people inside the house, and the only place I can be right now is here outside and try to communicate.
Oh. Well, thank you for taking the effort to be with us in that condition. But were you able to follow the previous presentations?
Yes, a little bit. I can't lie.
Yes,
but yeah.
Would you like to respond how that plays out, or how you respond to the presentations, how you can see it played out in your context around neocolonialism?
You guys, first with your presentation, and then my brother Kofi there. I think you could have, you couldn't have done better with everything that you guys have shared. I've had a conversation with Kofi, multiple times because we basically kind of like work together, and everything that he shared, I know those important details of everything that is happening, and I'm just glad that we're having this platform because these things are not really being spoken, especially outside of Africa. And one of the issues that I've always had with this is that, the history and things that we talk about colonialism today and things that are happening, for example, with cocoa and everything, I think in the side of Africa, we kind of know a lot about this history, but on the other side of outside of the continent, when you go to the countries that they were really, they actually did that to Africa, starting from the colonialism. The new generation right now, they don't really know what really happened during colonialism because these histories are not being taught in the schools. And because of that, even though we speak these things, we talk, but we don't really find the common ground because they don't really know what we're talking about. Most of them, when you share these informations, they're kind of like wondering and they're like, well, what really are you talking about, right? Because these informations are not being given from our schools. So one of the things that I was, when I was listening to your presentation, guys, one of the things that I was thinking is that I think it's important for, for the rest of the world to know the history, what has been done, to the continent. And I think from that moment, we'll have leaders who will be willing to actually take initiative, because most of people right now, they put blame on the old generation that our ancestors did this and that, this and that. It's not us, but we have a chance right now to change that, right? But we cannot really change anything if you don't know what we have done in the past, right? And so right now I'm here in South Africa. You guys know that Netherlands colonized here in South Africa. I have been getting emotional. You're just moving around the country. I'm just waiting for my questions. I don't want to take a lot of time to talk about that, but it's my first time to be here, and just seeing it, I've never seen because of the colonial effects. So, that's what I would say for now.
Thank you for sharing, and we'll get back to you for more questions. And thank you also for sharing that how the lack of knowledge through education of what the history did to the African continent in terms of awareness on the continent itself is really important, I think, what you shared. I remember being part of the student protest. We wanted to decolonize the curriculum here, but also South Africa was protesting against their colonial curriculum and Eurocentric curriculum. So it made us connected at that time. Maybe, Mika, I want to go to you as well, because you have a petition. And what I liked a lot about your petition is that it has a Pan-African perspective. It doesn't look at the borders, how it's shaped now, right? You know, all the scars that has been made by colonialism on the map. And you have, things like having an own currency and also not wanting proxy wars to be fought on the African continent. Can you elaborate maybe on these points from the petition and what the vision is under your petition and how it's maybe an answer to neocolonialism?
Yeah, absolutely. So my point of view is I believe that colonialism never really ended in Africa, but I believe they just changed the form or the way they operated. So, for instance, at the beginning, we had a white man, colonialist, actually in the country and trying to manage and everything to control. But after our forefathers fought for independence, we really got independence, but the system did not change. So everything that was done in the continent, when they were here, it is still being done right now while they're not here. To elaborate a little bit more on that is that, right now, when you find one African country that is trying to break out of this shock of colonialism, for instance, I can give you an example of Eritrea, I can give you an example of Zimbabwe. You'll see, even right now in Uganda, when they were trying to stand against these rights of gay rights and everything, you can see how the response from the Western countries, they'll put sanction on you, they'll try to limit your economy, they'll try to do everything they can to dismantle you and to teach you the lesson that you're not supposed to stand for yourself, you're not supposed to speak for yourself, you're not supposed to do anything because we are in the control. That goes on and on, even in the case of the pandemic that we had recently, goes on with the war that was happening between Ukraine and Russia, that you are obligated to choose a side. That goes on and on in the US and Africa summit that was happened in United States. African leaders were summoned to go to United States for that meeting, that if you're not going to show up, then there'll be consequences. That goes on with everything, even right now, the war that is happening right now. So you find that Africa is still being led by someone who is somewhere outside, but they have kind of like their representative. And we have seen in so many different levels, like you've seen a lot of our leaders who tried to stood up against that, what happened to them. Most of them were killed. And even today, there's still that battle that is happening. Even for us who are standing and talking about these things openly, we also, get threats sometimes because of, what we are doing to stand for the continent. That's why I'm saying that colonialism never really ended, but the system just changed. And so the heart behind this petition when we were writing as a team is that, we're not just sit here and just blame, colonizers, victimizing ourselves. Because we know in Africa, you have two choices, either to speak and to die or to stay quiet and embrace the old system, the colonialism system. So we have a bunch of politicians, which I can say, I don't really call them leaders in our continent, who do not dare to say anything about this because they know the consequences, what will happen to them. So they stay silent and just embrace the system. And as a result, we still have a divided continent. We still have a lot of, economic sanction that is happening in Africa, and we cannot break out of this. So we were thinking with the team that how can we really get out of this shock of colonialism that we are still having today? And I can give you an example of what is happening in the Western Africa. You realize that Western Africa was never free. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, those countries were still colonized by France all this time. I don't want to go to the numbers of uranium, how it's been used. Maybe I should give this an example. Just you can look at uranium that is taken by France going to, taken by France from Niger going to France. It goes to this one industry, this production that they produce, this nuclear, and then they're selling all around the world. And what happens is the money that is generated from the uranium resources that is coming from Niger is actually being brought back to Niger as a loan and aid. So basically, you give me loan or aid, something that is already mine, and I need to pay for that, right? And if I don't do that, there will be consequences. These countries have been colonized for all this time until this moment. Right now, we see a little bit of light because these countries are really trying to get out of this, shock of colonialism that is happening. And that is the most of status of African countries. That's what we are in, and that's why we are struggling. So when we were writing this, our hearts behind it was to address to African people that, all right, guys, we want to have a system that will work for us. And in order for us to have a system that will work for us, I think we need to be independent because Africa is rich and we have ability to actually change things upside down. Only if we exclude ourselves from these guys. We sanction ourselves. Africa must sanction ourselves. Come all of us together and work on these things out, because Zimbabwe was sanctioned for a couple of years, but they learn how to survive on their own. Yes, they're not having a perfect life there, but they're learning how to survive on themselves. The same thing to Eritrea, almost 3 decades. But they are learning how to survive on themselves. Why? What's going to happen if all of us Africans sanction ourselves, coming together and make sure that we have African Union that until today is still receiving loans and aids from outside, but make sure that the money that is going to African Union is coming from the people, is coming from the African government, is being donated from African diaspora and Africans in the continent. We're looking at the budget of African Union. It's almost like $600 million a year, which is not that amount of money. If all of us Africans come together and be like, okay, let's do this on our own, then we'll have an organization that will be able to work for us and actually implement the vision of 2063. Instead of us waiting for 40 years from now, it can actually be done right now. The borders can be, the visa can be destroyed right now. We have seen what is happening in South Africa and Tanzania, South Africa and Kenya, South Africa right now in Ghana, is the free visa. What is happening in Kenya with Djibouti, they remove, visa. All these stages, all these initiatives, African Union can actually do today. We have even one Africa passport with the African Union, but it's never been distributed to the people. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that
yes, if you can wrap up, then we can go to the audience as well. But please finish. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say that the heart behind this petition is actually that. And if you guys, because we have very limited amount of time here to speak, if you guys would like to read that petition, the petition is available. I think they'll be able to share with you guys to see the details of what we wrote in this, petition about the beautiful continent of Africa. That's what I was saying.
Yes, thank you. And the petition is called One Africa Right Now from Swahili Nation. I will put it on the program page so people can find it as well. Yeah. I have still a lot of questions, probably you as well, Max, but I want to first look to the audience if you have any questions for our panel speakers or Max or other Max.
Thank you. Thank you for such a nice and lively discussion. Okay. The one question that I really wanted to ask is, what is your opinion about the global super South, and how do they play a role into this neo-colonial structure? And sorry,
can you define global super South?
Yeah, like the new countries.
The BRIC countries, or
the new countries from the global south who are trying to use the same colonial structure but making them powerful, like India, China,
Russia.
Yeah, Russia.
And they want to involve Africa also a bit.
So the question is, I think, clear. You can feel free to respond. So the question was, how do you look at, within this current situation, the influence of new coming up countries? So you have the exploitation from Western countries, but also China's trading, etc. How you look at these developments as well?
So if I can go that first, for me personally, I always emphasize on independent Africa that first and foremost, before us looking outside, we need to strengthen ourselves. We need to come together. We need to make sure that we are economic independent. For example, there's an organization right now called BRICS that a lot of Africans actually excited because a lot of Africa, they hate West. But, they don't really hate Russia, and China and all these countries because historically, these countries never really did anything, wrong to Africa. So a lot of Africans are lying with this side of the world right now. But me personally, I feel like this is not what Africa. Of course, Africa needs collaboration, needs all this stuff. But first and foremost, the first priority should be Africans coming together and African getting away from this this dependence of different kind of organization, because we have an opportunity right now to create one Africa currency by ourselves. But when you look at the organization like BRICS, they have BRIC currency, right? Which a lot of people agree on that, but I feel like we need to focus on cleaning the house first before we start engaging with all these different ideas. Otherwise, there will be destruction to Africa's unity, and we are not going to focus on ourselves, but we'll focus on actually on the other side of the coin, because everybody, I believe that everyone is just looking an opportunity, to take a portion of what that is in Africa. Yeah.
Thank you.
For example, China and other countries have seen how Western have seen the mistake that Western have done to intervene with the Africa's policies. So right now they're trying to use a different kind of way. But I believe at the end, nothing will be. It's not for the benefit of Africa. Everybody's just looking to improve themselves. So it's very important for Africa to be independent first before, doing anything with anyone else. We can do that, but also we need to focus on us.
Thank you, Mika. I think that's a clear answer. And just to give, it's. I know there's a lot of things that we can discuss and unfold, but for more people in the audience to ask questions, I'm going to ask everyone to answer as concise as possible. But I want to give the other speakers as well a chance to give a concise answer to the question that was raised, if you like. Otherwise, we go to the next question. I think then
very short, maybe. The issue is, the BRICS and all these new alliances, it's about African realizing how powerful Africa can be if we unite. If we unite, China, the United States, Europe, they will have to listen to us. So Africa is actually in the position to lead the world. And that's what we are missing now, because we are divided. So that's what I want to add. The solution in Africa is a political solution. We need to become a political power. And that cannot happen with these nation states, small one, big one. We need to unite, create the United States of Africa with one president, one army, one currency. That's the solution. Otherwise, I was telling someone that if we don't do that, in the next 20, 50 years, African will end up like Indians have done in the United States. One day you will go to Africa, you will see on street in Africa, European, Asian, and African will be living again in the bush. So unifying Africa is strategically important. So that's why I like the petition, and I ask you all to sign for it, because it's important to take this step. If Africa unite, we are friends with Europe. We can work together. Don't be afraid like we want to have a power to dominate. In our culture, in the Ubuntu culture, we don't have this mindset of dominating others. So please understand that and sign the petition from my brother.
Chiforti?
Yeah, I think what Russia is using is soft power. When I was in Egypt, we had diplomats who came from the EU and they spoke about this. So it's soft power. You come and you look all sweet, all nice, and then you steal. And so this is what is going on. Cameroon, I like speaking from a practical perspective. We have Chinese companies here, and trust me, they are not treating us well. So I must tell you, I sometimes might even prefer the Americans, because when they come to your country, China, they take everything, and they are so rude, they are so disrespectful. And then in an economy in Africa with so much corruption, you imagine a Chinese man locking you up for nothing. If you disobey him, you are in trouble. They'll even flog you with a stick or something. These are things that are happening. I'm not saying all companies, Chinese companies, are like this, but I'm just saying that these are the realities we are facing already. So, like Max said, and Mickey, I think it's important that we unite. It's important that we come together. And this is the perfect opportunity. Imagine two giants are fighting. This is the time for Africa to rise. Honestly, what is going on in Mali, in all these countries, Burkina Faso, would have never happened if these giants were not fighting. Trust me, all these leaders would have been killed or something would have happened to them. Let's look at Gaddafi. Let's look at Sankara. Let's look at all these great leaders. They were killed because they wanted Africa to unite. But now, these other leaders in Mali, in Burkina, they are alive because these two giants are fighting. Because there is somebody who says, no, you're not going to kill them because I also have an interest. But this is a perfect opportunity. If Africa can take this, I think we'll be able to unite, we'll be able to stand together, stand strong, and really build the continent.
Thank you. We have room for one more question, so I'm going to ask if you really want to ask it, keep your hand raised, and I'm going to look around. There is 3. I have to choose one. Kel, did you see?
3 questions then.
I'll go to the other side.
Yes. So we did one on the left, we do one on the right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, you hold it. Okay. No, thank you for sharing your stories. Max, I'm wondering, you said political is the solution. How can we help with that from a European perspective? I remember you said in the beginning, just protesting or writing articles doesn't help. Thank you.
That's a good question. And maybe to the whole panel as a closing question, I like this question, like a point of action. What can we do here to fight neocolonialism?
We need solidarity. Desmond Tutu, you know him. He has an interview in Collège Tours. And he said the reason why apartheid stopped in South Africa was not because of the army resistance, the resistance with weapons, but because Europeans started to boycott products from South Africa. So what we need is you to understand that you have power. You have political power, you have economical power. So if we work together, we can change the system very fast. That's the reason why I am fighting in Europe, because most of these leaders that have been killed were in Africa, and they were only mobilizing African people. And now I am mobilizing European people. Our ambition is like next year, end of next year, to have teams in all 27 countries of the European Union, mobilizing students, mobilizing civil societies organization, mobilizing politicians to create this big alliance. Because this system is so strong that it can only be defeated if we are stronger than that. And the best way, what we can do is to come together and create this alliance. This is what I'm expecting from this side.
Thank you. Over to you, Mika and Joforti.
Oh yeah, appreciate that. I would just love to add to emphasize on what I shared earlier, education. For me, I feel an education not only in Africa, but also the education of how and what your forefathers did to Africa, because those syllabus, they're not being taught in Europe or in America. They don't really know, and I can't blame, but you know, ignorance, the good thing about ignorance is that it has a cure, and the cure is knowledge. Us really understanding, and if you guys get some chance to come to Africa, come and understand the concept of how colonialism did to Africa. I think this awareness, it can actually create some sort of responsibility in your hearts. You know, I studied in Korea, I lived there for 9 years. I've seen how Koreans have been taught about Korean history, what Japanese did to Korea, what Mongolians did to them, what Chinese did to them. And these guys, you can see right now, they're competing right there with, you know, with China, with Japan. They actually, in so many ways, they're above Japan. But that's because they really understand what happened to their country, and they're ready to actually, take initiative and do it, right? So I really believe in the education. I think if we start with that, then it will bring that knowledge of understanding and knowing that, okay, we all have a part to play, just like Brother Max said, both of us to come together and to make sure that we end this an ecosystem that is continue to kill a lot of people in the continent. And you have NGOs and you have, all these different organizations coming to actually try to fix these issues, but NGOs cannot really fix anything, unless we understand this historical context of what really happened and trying to make change.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And also, I think everyone emphasizes their own inequality and strength instead of this dependency on NGOs. I think that's a very important point that has been raised several times as well. Thank you for sharing. You have the last word.
Yeah. I think to me it's about changing the mindset of Africans and the mindset of particularly the young people. I don't think the change is going to come in this generation. I think the change is going to come with the young people that are coming up. There's a lot of awareness, but I think we must increase the awareness to let young people from 5-year-old to understand the culture, like Mika said, the culture, the tradition, the history of Africa, to understand that because you're black, you're not the devil, and to understand that Jesus was not a white man and all of this, because honestly, it comes from the religion. It comes from us seeing. Can you imagine you meet a white person and children are running like it's Jesus? This is just how much we've been brainwashed to think that we are inferior as black people and that we can't really achieve anything. Any new discovery, we say, oh, white man is too intelligent. Like, I don't understand. Even when the black man invents something, it's always thought to be invented by a white person. And I think it's really from the mind. We need to change this perception. And it comes from what? Creating more content, social media. It comes from just being able to have our own news outlet, be able to change the narrative.
Yeah.